Bloomberg Business Flash. This is Bloomberg Intelligence with Paul Sweeney and Scarlett Fu, and we're looking at cannabis stocks soaring right now. Aurora, higher. Canopy Growth, higher. The ETF that tracks cannabis stocks, MJ is the ticker, of course, also higher. And this is all on the ABC News report.
Of course, MJ.
MJ, because MJ, ETF,
Okay.
ticker.
All right, very good. Just checking if you guys knew.
All the ETFs have great tickers.
Right,
That is their selling point.
They do.
Okay, so let's talk about what's driving all of this. According to ABC News, President Trump is expected to sign an executive order, maybe today, that would reclassify marijuana to a Schedule III drug. We need to get some more perspective on this. Let's bring in Nathan Dean, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Policy Analyst, typically in Washington, but joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in Midtown Manhattan. Is it as simple as that, Nathan, for the president to just sign an executive order to make marijuana not a big deal?
So this is a symbolic order, but it's a very powerful symbolic order. And for what it's worth, I checked the president's schedule this morning. There's no formal ceremony on the docket. So if this does come out, it's going to have to be one of those things where it's just released out to the public. So just something that we're keeping in mind. But what this order most likely will say is he's going to direct the Justice Department and specifically the DEA to restart this process of reschedulization. Now, they're about 60 to 70% of the way through. This started under the Biden administration, so they don't have to go back to the beginning. But the question that we have is that how quickly will the DEA and the Department of Justice want to move on this? They could forego a hearing. They could actually speed it up. I think the quickest they can get it done is probably mid-2026. The question, though, is President Trump really serious about this? Because we've heard this playbook before of where he goes out and makes a positive statement about marijuana equities. And these equities, I like to say that they have hot sauce because there's lots of volatility. MSOS is up 60-some% since last week. The question is, how serious is this? And I think what we're telling our clients is that when this executive order comes out, we will have to see how politically this plays out for President Trump in the midterms. Is this something that he wants to drive out voters? Because we've heard that in the past, or is this something where he's just trying to incrementally move it closer to getting reschedulization?
I told you, Scarlett. Nathan Dean, based in Washington. We get him in New York. My radar went up. He's not coming up here unless somebody's buying him a dinner or a lunch.
Did you figure out who?
I figured it out. Team lunch today at a very nice Midtown steakhouse for the litigation and government.
Are you going to invite Paul?
He's always invited.
Exactly. I'm probably going on my credit card. Nathan, what are we looking for 2026? I mean, I think you've got to keep the government open in January, right? Isn't that an issue?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm at 30% chance of a shutdown in January. So, I mean, right now, 9 out of the 12 appropriation bills are only funded through January 31st. So if if they come back in 2026, and they don't figure out a solution, then obviously we have a shutdown. Now, Republicans, I don't think want a shutdown at the moment just because they've seen the playbook of what's happened in Virginia, New York City, New Jersey, Miami. And this is something where they are getting blamed, or at least they got the blame for the shutdown that occurred earlier this year. And I think Democrats are looking at the situation from the same lens, saying, look, we did well in Virginia, New Jersey, New York, and Miami. Let's not rock the boat here. But ultimately, shutdowns during midterms are bad politics. That's not really good news. But also, I would just say is the one thing from an investing point of view, keep your eye on, is that it's probably the last chance in 2026 to get something done by attaching, we call them Christmas tree bills, where you attach a bill as like you would attach an ornament to a tree. You attach a bill to the funding bill to try and get something passed. And one of the perfect examples, I think, is this bill called the Credit Card Competition Act, which raises competition for Visa and MasterCard. So you could see some headline risk related to the banks and Visa and MasterCard in January. It's just something we're keeping an eye on. I don't think it's going to happen, but just something to keep an eye on.
Okay, so that could happen. Is there going to be anything that happens on the Obamacare subsidies? Because the Democrats shut down the U.S. government over that, and they were supposed to get a vote in return in the Senate, but that didn't really go anywhere.
Well, we had breaking news this morning. So the Republicans signed the Democratic discharge petition and got enough votes. So what a discharge
English, please.
Yeah, what a discharge petition is that it essentially allows the minority to force a vote in the House over the Speaker of the House's objections. Now, you need a majority vote. The Republicans, but enough moderate Republicans, Representative Lawler from Long Island was one of the big leaders of this, signed on with the Democrats for a 3-year extension to Obamacare with no pay-fors or anything like that, just an extension. Now, Speaker Johnson's in a little bit of a pickle now because in January, they're most likely going to have this vote. And the question now goes to what is the Senate going to do? What is Senate Majority Leader John Thune going to do? Because if it does pass the House, it now becomes a Senate issue. But my colleague Dwayne Wright has been really looking at this, and his thesis, which I completely support, is that if President Trump wants these subsidies done, they're going to happen. And President Trump ultimately is going to have to be the one that makes the call on this, because both, I think the House Republican leadership wanted no extension whatsoever, no additional subsidies. But ultimately, it's going to come down to President Trump and his decision.
And we think he wants it because otherwise it looks bad politically?
Well, it's going to be extremely bad politically when 22 million Americans have higher premiums. I mean, just to put it in perspective, we had a client, just say, that his wife's on Obamacare and their premiums are going from $1,000 to $4,000 a month because without those subsidies. And so, this is going to impact a significant amount of Americans, including many of those in Republican-led districts. And so that's why these moderates are extremely pushing the issue here, because at the end of the day, the writing on the wall in terms of momentum at the moment for these midterms is going towards the Democrats. And if you think that there's going to be a Democratic takeover of the House, these moderates on the Republican side are going to have to try and fight tooth and nail to keep those extensions going.
The president is scheduled to give a speech later today. I'm presuming it's going to focus on the economy because it's been made clear that that's what voters are really concerned about. What are you hearing? What are you thinking?
So think of this as the first opening salvo of the 2026 midterms. This is a way for President Trump to say, here's all the accomplishments we've done in 2025. Let's start talking about affordability, because that's the one issue that really has been resonating with both parties in terms of what voters care about in 2026. So I think tonight's speech isn't going to be really much of a forward-looking speech, even though he did say that he was going to, or at least the Bloomberg News is reporting that there's going to be some elements talking about what's going to come up in 2026. But I think it's just going to be more of a campaign-style speech, because 2026 legislatively, we don't anticipate much happening, and it's going to be really much a gridlock year from the congressional perspective.
30 seconds left here. It is going to be an election year next year. Is the feeling like what usually happens is going to happen again, which is the party that's out of power gets back in power in the midterms?
Yeah, so the minority always usually does really well in the off-cycle elections, and with how we've seen in Virginia, New Jersey, Miami, the New York City, there's a lot of Republicans. But I tell my clients, track the retirements and track the staffer retirements. When staffers start leaving the House and they start looking for lobbyist jobs, that's when that party feels like they're in trouble.
That's a good idea. I didn't think of that. And they just go round and round, government to lobbyist, government to lobbyist, and that's kind of. That
is lucrative. Revolving door.
That is the economy, yes, of Washington, D.C. I mean, there's that's it. You guys are a company town. Nathan Dean, Senior Policy Analyst at Bloomberg Intelligence, up here for the holiday lunch at a very nice one of my favorite steakhouse. Yep, very nice. I'm a big fan there. So
you'll be showing up there at 12:15?
I might. I know these guys, and they're going to ask me for my credit card, as they typically do. So we'll see how that goes.